Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Casual Commander. I'm here with my buddy Nick. We
So,
just been playing some 1v1 Commander just because it is what it is when you only have one other person. So today I'm going to do my Zur The Enchanter deck profile. This is a deck that I've had basically since the beginning, since I started playing. This is my second deck I ever made. This deck's probably gone through the most changes because Zur is so versatile and you can do so many different things with it. So I would call this, if I had to call it anything, I would call it a Zur zombie deck profile. I do run a lot of zombie synergies and I really like it. So yeah, let's get into it. So Zur is a 1/4 that whenever he attacks, he has flying. Whenever he attacks, you can grab a mana value 3 or less enchantment and put it on the battlefield. So I don't run any enchantments that are 2 mana or less for Zur. I want the best bang for my buck, so I only do 3. So you know that. Basics. With my land count, I only run basic lands. You guys are welcome to run whatever you want, but that's just what I do. So 13 plains, 13 islands, 13 swamps. Okay, that's it for that. All right, so we run technically the most creatures in here out of any type. Just one more than enchantments. We run 23 creatures, 22 enchantments. So let's do the creatures first. We got Ruin Crab. We do have a mill theme in this deck. So Ruin Crab is a 1-drop that can mill each opponent. That's good. Like I said, we get benefits off that. Binding Mummy. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under control, you can tap target artifact or creature. We have some tap synergies in this deck, as well as zombie synergies. So this card's actually really good in this deck. Wayward Servant. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can game somebody with that if you can make enough zombies, which we definitely can do. Bruvac. I know this is a expensive card, but he's kind of mandatory in here if you want to do mill. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many. He's great. Drum Bellower. I told you we have some tap synergies in this deck, so he can untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So, I mean, basically every untap step, because obviously on your own, your stuff would untap. Drum Bellower is going to make your creatures untap, which, once again, we have synergies for that. Ophiomancer. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, create a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch. This pairs nicely. I mean, I'll just kind of show it now with Attrition. So attrition, pay a black, sack a creature, destroy target non-black creature. So if we have enough black to go around the table, we can basically pop a creature on every person's turn. It's pretty nice as long as you have the black for it. I like the combo. My buddies who normally complain about my decks, they were actually impressed with that. And I was like, all right. Wall of Blood, pay 1 life. Wall of Blood gets +1/+1 till end of turn. There's a few synergies with there. When we get to them, I'll bring them up and try to be like, hey, remember Wall of Blood? Zathrid Necromancer. So this card, I kind of just showed it, but it goes well with Arcane Adaptation. So whenever another human creature you control dies, make a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. The combo is if you can make all your zombies also humans, so whenever they die, you just make more zombies. So basically, they just keep fueling your engine of whatever you're doing. So it's pretty good. I love the artwork for this card. It's one of my favorites. Undead Alchemist. So part of our zombie mill package. If a zombie would deal combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. And whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from their library, you exile it and make a 2/2 black zombie. Undead War Chief. Zombies cost 1 less to cast, and then zombie creatures you control get +2/+1. It's a really good way to beef up our stuff and then get a little bit of a reduction. That's something over time that I've taken out of my decks. I used to play a lot of like zombie anthems where they would buff up all my zombies, and then I realized like they don't really get enough payoff for me. A zombie Lady of Scrolls. So the reason this is in here is because we have, like I just showed you, Arcane Adaptation. We have a way of making our whole board whatever tribe we want. So it's not a big deal if we draw this card. We can be like, okay, cool, we'll make everything a wizard. So if we do make zombies, we can say they're wizards, and we can use them to draw a ton of cards. Which we have ways of using those draws that we get. Consuming Aberration. If you were in a mill deck, you probably should run this card. Its total power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in all of our opponent's graveyards, so this can get massive. And then whenever you cast a spell, each opponent mills until they hit a land. Ghoulcaller Gisa. So it's a 3/4. It can make zombies. You can pay a black, tap, sack another creature, make X 2/2 black zombies, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So for instance, that Wall of Blood that we had, we can pay a lot of life if we need a big board of zombies and then sack it and yeah, just make a huge board of zombies to do whatever with. Mirko Vosk. If he deals combat damage to a player, the player reveals cards to the top of their library till they mill 4 lands. Also has flying. pretty good card. He was actually my first commander with these colors that I tried to make. When I tried to make an original mill deck, he was the commander I picked. And eventually I found Zur, and I was like, there's more stuff I can do with that. I'm a sucker for a 3-color deck. Gravespawn Sovereign. So this is a card that got reprinted in that Midnight Hunt commander set, but before that, this card was like, you couldn't... the only printing you could find was like a really, really old-ass printing of it. So it's a great card. Tap 5 untapped zombies you control. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So remember that drum bellower that I just mentioned like a few minutes ago. So yeah, we can tap 5 untapped zombies, bring back any creature we want from a graveyard, and then like, okay, cool, next person's untap step, we untap our creatures, and then cool, I can do this again and again and again. So this card, like, I don't remember how many infinites we have in this deck. I don't consider them infinites, but basically we have ways to kind of have, we can mill out everybody in like one go round, or we could like, put out I don't know, maybe infinite zombies. I'm not entirely sure. I've done some crazy stuff with this deck. Grave Titan, shots fired at the nitpicky nerds because they don't like this card and they talk crap about it. But Grave Titan, I actually run it in quite a few decks, including this one, because it's effective. Entering the battlefield or attacks, you put two 2/2 black zombies onto the battlefield. This also has Death Touch. I like Grave Titan. He doesn't go in every deck, but I like him. This is a tech card that I've showed on the channel like in the last couple weeks with some deck profiles. I think with my snake deck I showed it off. But Capsho Kite Fins. I found this card and I just was like, wow, I have a lot of decks this could go in. So whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under my control, tap target creature an opponent controls. So, I mean, let me show you right now. Where's it at? So this is the card that it pairs with, Verity Circle. So whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And so because we're making a ton of zombies and tokens, Capsho Kite Fins mixed with that, we can draw a ton of cards. Like I said, we can tap down our opponent's stuff to make sure they're not going to be able to do anything. It's got some great synergies. Sun Titan and a Zur deck I highly recommend because, I mean, a good portion of your deck is 3 mana or less, so Sun Titan can just grab that back out. Plus, there's a few enchantments that can like sack themselves, and then you can just keep getting them back with Sun Titan, so it's pretty good. Haunt of Hightower. When it attacks, defending player discards a card, but the main reason it's in here is because whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 on them. So we have a way of milling out our opponents, or at least milling out a lot of them. So this thing can get beefy, and once again, even if your opponent had like a flying blocker or something like that, that Ghoul Caller Gisa, where like we could sack this if it was gigantic, make a ton of zombies. You get what I'm going with this. Galecaster Colossus. Tap an untap wizard you control, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. So if we call zombies with Arcane Adaptation and we have a ton of zombies, we can call wizards, I should say, and then Galecaster Colossus, I can just tap my zombies that are also wizards and just bounce my opponent's whole board, basically. It's nice. Luminate Primordial. So we play a Tainted Remedy in here. I'll show you here in a second, but it's the only reason this card's in here, because Tainted Remedy says that whenever an opponent would gain life, they lose life instead. So Luminate Primordial would basically exile a creature from each opponent's board, and then instead of gaining the life, like this card would say, they would lose the life. So it's the only reason I would ever play this card, or unless I was in a jam. It's kind of like a Swords to Plowshares, but for each opponent when it enters the battlefield. You could take this portion out of the deck, to be honest. There's not... I'm all ears for anybody that has more suggestions as cards that make my opponents gain life that I could pair with Tainted Remedy. The only one I know for a fact that's good that I'm not playing because it's like an auto win is there's Beacon of Immortality that says basically double target player's life total, and because of Tainted Remedy, they would just auto lose right there. So I'm not really looking to do that. I want it to be a bit more challenging to try to win. And then we got 2 more creatures. Okay, Overseer of the Damned. When it enters the battlefield, you can destroy target creatures, so that's good. Spot removal. But then whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So I just played my buddy Nick in a 1v1, and I've been playing this deck, this version of it, for a couple months now. But that card that I showed you, Attrition, where you can pay a black, sack a creature, blow something up, and then with Overseer, you basically just get that zombie token back, as long as whatever you blew up was not a token. So yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. Anything that can make zombies that you don't have to keep putting mana in for is nice. Toxrill the Corrosive. I'm happy I found a deck for this. I love this card. He's great. This was like the only card that I really liked out of Crimson Vow. So at the beginning of each M step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. And then whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter it dies, make a 1/1 black slug creature token. So not only does this give us more tokens, we can pay a blue and a black, sack a slug, draw a card. With our deck, we can choose to make anything slugs. So that's another thing, is you could eventually end up sacking zombies with this to draw cards. But the main thing this is in here for is to kind of do a slower Elishnorn to make our opponent's creatures all become next to nothing and die. They become weaker, and then we make tokens off of that, so it just makes us stronger. So, and like I said, we have token synergies in this deck. Okay, so let's get to the enchantments. So, Arcane Adaptation, I mentioned this card many times. Choose a creature type when it enters, and then all your creatures are that type as well as their other types. So, I've played this before, and my opponents have been like, hey, aren't your zombies humans now? And it's like, no, they are zombie humans. They are both. So, you can choose whatever type you want. The main ones we might call zombies, but most of the time, because the tokens that we make are going to be zombies anyway, we just call humans for the that one wizard. I forgot his name, Necromancer or whatever, Zathor Necromancer, or we call wizards because of some small wizard synergies. That's basically it. As foretold, so like I found this card like late. Like my buddy Jesse, he loves this card, so anyway, he showed it to me, and now I'm like, I want to run As Foretold in like every deck. So it's not always the greatest card, but if you can get it early, it's nice. At the beginning of your upkeep, you put a time counter on it, and then once each turn, you can pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost, as long as it's equal to or less than the number of time counters on this. So, like, we don't have a ton of, like, 1-drops, but, like, if this can get out where it's got 3 on it, then we can really start getting some value out of it, because we can start cheating out, like, our enchantments and stuff like that. So, As We're Told, just a nice card to grab. You know, there's times where you don't really have like a combo synergy piece in your hand with, you know, what you can grab with Zur. So As Foretold's always a nice thing to grab. Attrition, I mentioned this card before. This card really puts in work in this deck. Sack a creature, destroy target non-black creature. I mean, yeah, I guess if our opponent's playing mono-black, this card's not going to do much, but that very rarely happens in a commander game where Attrition doesn't have a good target. Aura of Silence, this is a card that goes well with Sun Titan. Artifacts and enchantment spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast, but then you can sack it, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then with Sun Titan, we can just grab it right back. Back to basics. Sorry, bro. Like, don't complain to me if I shut down your non-basic lands. Don't complain to me. You didn't have to play them. They don't untap during their controller's untap step. It's so nice whenever your opponent taps out and they're like, okay, cool, like I'm ahead, and then you do a back to basics. And they get so salty, but I'm like, it's your fault. Dark Prophecy, whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life. This has great synergy with Attrition and so many other things in this deck to be able to draw. I mean, it's not a May, so you got to be careful to not deck yourself out, but you can pair this with other cards, and it really gives you really good draw power in the deck. Ghostly Prison, I think you got to run this in a Zur deck, just gives you that extra protection because it's going to take you a little while to build up your stuff. Light of Promise, we do have a few life gain cards in this deck that can like put out a lot of life gain. And the main reason I like this card in here is because it is searchable. So if I do have those life gain synergies, I can put this on Zur, for instance, and make him like really beefy, and he has flying, and yeah. Pariah, this is probably like the latest addition to the deck. I found this card and I was like, I just really dig it. So enchant creature, all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. So I mean, the main thing I try to do is put this on an opponent's creature that wants to kill me and be like, okay, cool, like put this on your commander. Like, do you want to attack me? Because your commander's just going to die. Or it kind of incentivizes that if we're having a hard time getting rid of a commander or another creature, my opponents who aren't that person can attack me, and anyway, the Pariah will deal the damage. It's a way to get rid of a problematic creature. And it's searchable in the deck, so that's why I like it. Propaganda, basically another Ghostly Prison, because we don't want to be attacked. Psychic Corrosion, this is like one of the key cards in the deck. That's honestly one of the main reasons why I wanted to switch my mill deck from Miracle Voss to Zur years ago. So whenever I draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into the graveyard. You've seen some draw synergies. We got Azami. We got the card I just showed off, the what is it, Dark Prophecy. We have plenty of more draws in this deck, so I don't know. Tainted Remedy. If an opponent would gain life, the player loses that much life. That's what I was mentioning earlier with their Primordial. I think we have like maybe one other card that deals with that, but I am open to suggestions if anybody knows some other stuff for Tainted Remedy, because I want to run it in here because I think it's cool. Underworld Dreams, whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to that player. We have a few synergies with that. I mean, you could turn Zur into more of a wheel theme. I tried it before to make my opponents wheel cards, but I'm already doing that because I have a... I'm building back up my... why can't I think of it? The Grixis guy that does wheels. He's a zombie wizard. People know what it is. I'm sorry, Nick.
I
Yeah,
don't.
because you're an idiot. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Nekuzar the Mind Razor. Yeah, that's it. So because I run a Nekuzar deck already, I'm like, I don't really want to just do multiple decks that wheel like that, wheel my opponents. So I just put this in here as like a nice tech card, keeps my opponents in check, whatever. Verity Circle, like I mentioned before, we have ways of tapping down our opponent's creatures. So this is honestly the best draw card that I've come across really for this Zur deck. Like I used to run Phyrexian Arena. Phyrexian Arena is just not a good card, guys. Like in Commander, it's just not a good card anymore because like you got to wait a whole turn just to draw one additional card. When it's like in this Zur deck, plenty of people are using like creature abilities to tap it to do stuff, whatever, and then we have ways of tapping their creatures, and I'm like, I get way more draw power off of this one. Anointed Procession, because this is a zombie deck, so it's our way of doubling our tokens. Endless Ranks of the Dead. At the beginning of each upkeep, create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, where X is half the number of zombies you control on and down. This can get out of control pretty easily. A Dictate of Erebos, you could like run this in so many black decks, but I love this card, but I don't want my opponents to like get tired of seeing it. I mean, they already don't like it, so I just keep it to this deck. But yeah, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. We know that's good. Kindred Discovery. So like a year ago, I probably wouldn't have had this card before it got reprinted because this was like a $20 card. Now it's like a $5 card, which is so much better. So thank you, Wizards, for reprinting this. But yes, we're going to normally choose zombies for this, and whenever they attack or draw, we draw a card. And when we can go search something like Psychic Corrosion, we want to like. There's decks where you're down to draw cards, but obviously, if you don't have a whole lot to do with it, you'll just end up having to discard your stuff. But when we have Psychic Corrosion, we can mill our opponents out really easily with that. Sphere of Safety, because this is an enchantment heavy deck, so this can get out of control with the Ghostly Prisons of Propaganda as well. Axis of Mortality, so this pairs with Tainted Remedy, and it also pairs with a few other things, like that Wall of Blood that I showed off. So with Wall of Blood, we can go down to like one life to make it big, like on our opponent's turn, and basically on our turn, we're like, okay, cool, I had one life, now I'll switch life totals with you, so now only you have one life. It's pretty nasty. I like this card, I've always liked this card, and I've wanted to run it in something, and I'm happy I'm running it now. Forced Fruition, whenever an opponent plays a spell, that player draws 7 cards. This mainly has synergy with that Underworld Dreams that I showed you. So whenever I have this card in my hand, I'm like, cool, I got to go grab Underworld Dreams with Zur. So that's nice. Plus, in a mill theme, it's like the more cards they're having to draw, like if they have to draw 7 every time they cast a spell, like that's just more cards that they don't have in their deck. Necromancer's Covenant. Whenever it enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. And then I make a 2/2 black zombie for each creature that was exiled this way. And then zombies I control have lifelink. It's just another way to get a ton of zombies on the board with this deck. Okay, let's go to the artifacts. Profane Memento. Whenever a creature an opponent controls hits the graveyard from anywhere, I gain a life. It's just a 1-drop that allows me to gain a lot of life from this deck for not a whole lot of cost, obviously. Altered Dementia. Sack a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to that creature's power from their library into the graveyard. Most of the time, we're milling our opponents. I can't really see many times where we'd want to mill ourselves because just not in this deck. We're mainly just wanting to get rid of our opponent's libraries. Jet Medallion, because you know I play the medallions in my decks. Mind Crank, whenever an opponent loses life, the player mills that many cards. Just another way that we can have our opponents mill. Pearl Medallion, Sapphire Medallion, Maskwood Nexus. So this, for the longest time, I wasn't running this. I don't really know why, but it works really well in this deck since we have multiple tribal themes where we're like, oh, I want my creatures to be this tribe as well. So this just solves all those problems because all of our creatures are every creature type, so it's all good. So they're all zombies, they're all wizards, they're all humans, all good. Yeah, for 4 mana, pretty good. And then the last artifact's Teferi's Puzzle Box. So at the beginning of each player's draw step, the player puts the cards in their hand on the bottom of their library in the order, then draws that many cards. So this is good because of Underworld Dreams. Like we can make our opponents mill, or draw a new hand and get burned for a lot of damage. And then this is also good for Psychic Corrosion, like I said. So that's 2 cards that are searchable whenever we get the puzzle box. So yeah, pretty good in that regard. Okay, let's go to the sorceries. I only have 5. Essence Harvest. Target player loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So Wall of Blood can get big. Haunt of Hightower can get big. If we use that Light of Promise and we're gaining a lot of life, this card goes with it because you gain a lot of life and then that feeds off of Light of Promise. Or if you've already gained life, Light of Promise, you can do whatever the creature was. And then Consuming Aberration can also get big. So there's a few ways we can make a creature gigantic and then like just make them pay with Essence Harvest. This is one of my favorite cards, and I imagine in Pauper, which I don't play, but I imagine in Pauper this card's pretty damn good. Gruesome Fate, this is also another new addition. I don't know why I wasn't playing this, but each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control. I mean, you know, in this deck, we can get up toward, like, we can get like 20, 30 zombies, maybe even more than that. So, I mean, we could just finish our opponents with 1 card. That'd be good. My Totic Manipulation. So this is my tech that I've loved playing in my blue decks, and I took it out for the longest time because I got convinced by people that were like, ah, that's not that good of a card. And then now I'm like, if you don't play green in a commander deck, I think my Totem Manipulation is actually really good. So you pay 3, look at the top 7 of your library, put one of those cards on the battlefield if it has the same name as a permanent. That includes your opponent's permanents. So if you have 2 colors, let's say I have blue black, but I have an opponent playing white. If I hit my Totem Manipulation and they have a plains, I can, if I have a top 7 card and it's any of my lands, I'd be able to just cheat onto the battlefield untapped. Obviously, if you ran like a deck that ran like a card that said you can have multiple copies of this card in your deck, as many as you want, obviously my Totic Manipulation works with that because you can just cheat them out because it's a name of another permanent already on the battlefield. So that's pretty cool. I like my Totic Manipulation. You should use that in it. What deck were you saying you ran that? You ran that creature that you can run as many as you want that mills?
Oh, Persistent Petitioners.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to do that with this build, but you could take that tech if you wanted to and make a commander deck doing that. Sleep. This is a card that could come out. I'm not entirely sure, but tap all creatures target player controls. Those creatures don't untap during their player's next untap step. I like this. I mean, just telling all your opponent's creatures to go to sleep real quick, and then you might draw cards off Verity's Circle, and then they're wide open to attack with is nice. And then Mind Grind. Each opponent reveals cards on the top of their library until they reveal X land cards, then put all cards revealed this way to the graveyard. X can't be 0. Normally, I'm looking to try to get around like 8 off this is ideal. Like if I could save up and I play this for 10 mana total, that's what I would like. And I feel happy. But sometimes if you just have nothing else to do with your mana, just like say screw it and just do a Mind Grind. Crypt Incursion. So this has some synergies with some other cards in the deck. Exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. You gain 3 life for each card exiled this way. This works well with Light of Promise because it's a way to gain a lot of life. This works well with... what did I say? We have other ways of gaining life. I'm trying to remember. Regardless, it's just a great way to gain a ton of life in this deck. And then lastly, for the deck, we have Congregate. Target player gains 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. So this is a synergy card with Tainted Remedy that basically we can make our opponents gain life. I should put that in there. We can make them gain life for 2 for every creature on the battlefield, which would be a lot with all our zombies, and then with Tainted Remedy, we can just kill them. Or if we don't have Tainted Remedy and we have a lot of zombies, or they have a big board, we could just save ourselves and gain a lot of life. So that's it for the deck profile, guys. Like I said, it's zombie, a little bit of life gain trickery, some tap trickery. It's just a lot of fun. So, yeah, I don't know. Hope you guys enjoyed. I feel like this is definitely a different version of Zur than you've probably seen before. Hope you like it. Have a good one.